All right, here's our homework together. Can you graph this? Let's do it one step at a time. The best is if you try it first and then play the video, but if you need support, I understand. So, what are the zeros? Those are your x-intercept. What number makes the first parenthesis 0? It's the opposite number. What's the exponent? That's odd, which means it's going to cross. So I can go right to my graph, find 2, know it's going to cross. Next one, what makes it 0? What's the opposite number? And the exponent is 2. That means it's going to bounce. So I find -1. The leading term is the same as the power term. I take x and I multiply it by x squared to know what's the most powerful term in the equation. That tells me the end behavior. That means the right end goes up and the left end goes down. The y-intercept. I need to plug in 0. So if I plug in 0, 0 subtract 2 and 0 plus 1, and then solve it. So that's -2 times 1 squared. So square first times -2, that's -2. So find that on your graph. I said I know the right end goes up and I know the left end goes down. There's one more x value I want to find that's in between the intercepts, and that's at +1. So up here, I'm going to plug +1 in to fill in the graph, and then I'm going to solve it. So that's 1 take away 2, 1 plus 1, and squared. Altogether, that answer is -4. And now I'm going to connect it together. Now from this graph, I can see there's a maximum at -1, 0. I can also see that there's a minimum at 1 and -4. That's it. That's what I want you to do. Do you want to try number 2 and then press play? All right. So there's a 0 at 0 with an even exponent. So at 0, it's going to bounce. That also means the y-intercept is 0. So when you plug in 0, the answer is 0. So we already have some of it filled out. I can go right here. There's my start. The next one is at +2. There's an odd exponent, so that means it's going to cross. And the last one is at -2. It has an even exponent, so it's going to bounce. The end behavior. So I have x squared times x squared. So if I add that across the exponents, I get x to the 5th. That means it's positive, which means the right end goes up, and odd, which means the left end goes down. So I know the right end goes up and the left end goes down. I'm going to fill in what I don't know. So I have +1 and -1. So I'm going to start with +1 and solve it. So 1 squared, 1 take away 2, and then 1 plus 2 is 3, and 3 squared is 9. So altogether that's -9. So 1 gives me -9. I'm going to do the same thing with -1. So -1 squared, -1 take away 2, -1 plus 2. So -1 squared is 1, -1 take away 2 is -3, -1 plus 2 is 1, and 1 squared is 1. So altogether that answer is -3. And then put the pieces together and you have your graph. So recognize where it bounces and where it crosses. So we have a maximum at -2, 0. We also have a maximum at 0, 0. We have a minimum at -1, -3, and we have another minimum at +1 and -9. Eventually, you're going to have to try this independently. So maybe number 3, do you want to try it and then watch the video? All right, there's only 2 zeros here. +1, it's even, so it bounces, and -2, it has an odd exponent, so it's going to cross. So we're going to find that. So I got +1 and -2. So it's x squared times x. So that means the right end goes up and the left end goes down. I don't know the y-intercept, but I can do this. So the right end goes up and the left end goes down. To find the y-intercept, plug in 0. So 0 subtract 1 and 0 plus 2. So negative 1 squared times 2, that's going to be a positive answer, which is 2. Just a little bit. So find where 2 is. There's only one x value I don't know yet, which is at negative 1. That's in between the intercepts. So I'm going to plug in negative 1, take away 1, and negative 1 plus 2, and just solve it. So that's negative 1, negative 1, negative 1 plus 2. So negative 2 squared is positive 4 times 1. And now I have all the points I need to connect and make the curve. So again, the y-intercept's at 2. The maximum is at negative 1 and 4. We have a minimum at 1 and 0. And that's it. All right, 3 more to practice. Zeros. 0 is a 0. That's an even exponent. It's going to bounce. Positive 2, odd exponent, cross. Negative 2, odd exponent, going to cross. So I'm going to go to 0, then 2, then negative 2. Then I'm going to multiply this out, just the leading terms, and multiply together. If I add the exponents, it's going to be negative x to the 4th, which means both ends go down. Again, practice these end behavior. So I know this end goes down and this end goes down. The x values in between the intercepts. So I know the y-intercept's also 0. So positive 1 and negative 1, I'll do that up here. So negative 1 squared, 1, take away 2, 1 plus 2. That's negative 1 squared, then negative. So a negative times a negative is 1, and times 3, that's going to be 3. So 1 gives me the answer 3. I'm going to do the same with negative 1. So we have negative 1 squared, negative 1 take away 2, negative 1 plus 2. So that's negative and 1, and negative 3 and 1. So if I multiply negative times a negative, it will give me the same answer, 3. And then I can connect to make my m. That's what it'll look like. And there it is. We have a maximum at negative 1, 3. We have another maximum at 1, 3. We have a minimum at 0, 0. And it's done. All right, number 5. Zeros. Negative 1, 1 through negative 1, odd crosses. Positive 1, odd crosses. And then negative 3, odd crosses. If I go x times x times x, that gives me where the ends are going. So the right end goes up and the left end goes down. So I have negative 1, I have negative 3, and I have positive 1. And I know this end goes up and this end goes down. I'm going to plug in 0. So 0 plus 1, 0, take away 1, 0 plus 3. That's going to be 1 times negative 1 times 3. That gives me the answer negative 3. So now I know this part of the graph. So one more part of the graph, I need to plug in negative 2. I'll do that right here. So negative 2 plus 1, negative 2 take away 1, negative 2 plus 3, and then solve it. So that's negative 1, negative 3, and 1. So that altogether is positive 3. So I have a maximum there at 1, 3. Negative 2, 3. I have a minimum at 0 and negative 3. All right, one left. You're doing great. I really want you to try it and then press the video, but we'll see. So we have a 0 at 0 with an odd exponent, so it's going to cross at 0. At positive 2, as an odd exponent, it's going to cross. At negative 2, it has an odd exponent, it's going to cross. If I go x times x times x, that's x cubed. That means the right end goes up, and that means the left end goes down. Zero to negative 2. This goes up, this goes down. This is also 0. So what numbers do I need to plug in? So at positive 1, so it's 1, 1 take away 2, 1 plus 2. That gives me 1 times negative 1 times 3. So at 1, the answer is negative 3. I'm going to do the same thing with negative 1. That gives me negative 1 times negative 3 times 1. And negative times the negative is positive 3. So now we have the points to connect and curve and turn. And there's our graph. So we have a maximum at negative 1, 3. And we have a minimum at positive 1, negative 3. There you go. Mr. GMath over and out. Proud of you for doing your work, trying your best, trying to learn it. Until next time.